Welcome. I'm Julie Bacon, and you're listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast, a podcast for dog handlers who are on a mission to achieve big goals. Here I share lessons, insights, personal stories, and tools you can apply during your next show, trial, or test to help you strengthen your mental game and hopefully cue more consistently. Be sure to check out the show notes where you'll find details about the episodes, plus important links, including the link to the Dogged Planner and Workbook created just for handlers on a mission. So if you're ready to improve your competitive mindset, get out of your own way, and connect with your dog like never before, then it's time to get comfy, bring an open mind, and work your mindset. Hey there, and welcome back to the podcast. All right, this week we're talking about trust. And the most important thing that we need to know about trust that we're going to talk about this week is trusting yourselves. Yes, you want to trust your dog, you want your dog to trust you, and we're going to talk about that as well. But it's really important that you trust yourself. And I think that for some people, this is where like performance nerves, ring nerves, whatever you want to call it, performance anxiety even, where it can stem from because you don't trust yourself enough. You don't trust that you will, be able to trust in your skills, or you won't trust your own experience when you get in there, or you don't trust that you'll do the plan that you laid out, or you don't trust that you'll be able to, stay connected with your dogs. Whatever it is, sometimes our worries, our fretting, our anxiety, our ring stress comes from the fact that we lack trust in ourselves. And then therefore that can spill over into trusting our dogs or trusting our relationship with our dogs. So trust is actually really important in sport, right? Because we have to be able to trust ourselves not only in the ring, but also to do the things outside the ring in order to better ourselves, which means practicing when we say we're going to practice, even getting our dogs out for 5 minutes, every day for just like a quickie, something, or, that we trust ourselves that we're going to do the work. Because the opposite of that is self-sabotage, right? And so the example that I always use is dieting, because dieting is an easy thing. You start, maybe it's fresh on Monday morning. You're like, we start fresh this week. This is going to be great. And you're like, no sugar in the house, or, no carbs after 5, or whatever rules you're setting in place. And by the second day, you're like, it's not going to be that bad if I just have this, or if I just have this snack, or let me just finish up these last 3 cookies because then they'll be out of the house, which is, by the way, something I say to myself too often. And that is, all of those examples are forms of self-sabotage, meaning we know what it is we should be doing and even what we want to be doing, but for whatever reason, we take the sabotage route. And, I get why. It's easier in the moment. There's gratification in the moment. There's definitely joy in eating those last 3 cookies in the moment. And my rationale of like, okay, well, at least they'll be out of the house and then I can like start really fresh tomorrow kind of a thing. But regardless, if I'm being really honest, it's self-sabotage. And when I sabotage myself in even little ways, little 3 cookie ways, right? What it does is it erodes the trust I have in myself. All of this is going on in my own head, right? Between me, myself, and I. Like it doesn't even involve anybody else yet. It doesn't even involve my dog. It doesn't involve anyone else in the world yet. It just is an ability to trust myself. And another example of trusting ourselves that I use quite often is when you are thinking about your day, and maybe you're running, maybe it's a Saturday and you're running, and your first run of the day, again, whatever venue it is, you mess up. And then while you're on course or while you're still in the ring, you keep replaying that like mess up, and you're like, darn it, I can't believe I did that. And you get mad at yourself. And maybe even as a result, the wheels come off the rest of the run, or you don't do that well, or you make another mistake that you normally would not have made. Okay. And that's because you were kind of looking in the rear view mirror at that mistake that you made, and you couldn't kind of let it go in the moment and look forward and be present in the moment. So what I often advise handlers to do is to promise themselves that at the end of the day, every day that they trial, or even sometimes when they train, that they will look at the runs and make some notes and really analyze, what happened at the end of the day. And the reason this is important is for two main reasons, but there's some minor ones as well. The main reasons are, one, by promising yourself that you will look at your run at the end of the day, you can let it go in the moment, right? Because you build up this habit of like, yep, I know I just made a mistake, but we will look at that later. Right now, I've got to finish the rest of my run, right? The rest of my healing pattern, the rest of my course, whatever I'm doing. I have to finish. I will do that later. And so we're able then to let it go and get right back into the present moment. The other thing it does is when we keep that promise to ourselves at the end of the day, then we show ourselves that we are someone who keeps promises to ourselves and we can trust it. So that means the next time you're in the ring and a mistake happens, maybe you think about it for a fleeting second, but you're like, nope, we'll unpack that later, and you're able to get right back into the game. Okay? But that will fail if you don't keep your promises to yourselves, right? So, and that's where the trust kind of thing comes back around, is we want to make sure that we understand that there's all these little ways that we are either building trust in our own selves or we are eroding that trust, sabotaging it, not believing in ourselves for whatever reason, okay? So it's important that we think about, can you trust yourself? And I want that to be sort of your first bit of homework today. I don't usually give homework this early in the episode, but we'll go with it. But I want you to really think about, like, can I trust myself? Do I trust myself in the ring? Do I trust my skills with my dog? Do I trust myself to eat better? Do I trust myself to exercise? Like, whatever it is, like, do you find yourself trustworthy? And you don't have to go too far with it. You don't have to get all existential with it or whatever, right? But I think it's important that we are able to set expectations for ourselves and follow through with ourselves and know that we can trust ourselves to do whatever it is. We trust in our skills. We trust in our promise that we will unpack our run later. We are trusting ourselves. And that helps us believe in ourselves, get confidence, squash doubt, right? Because we realize that we're becoming the person that we wanted to be, and we trust that we will do the right thing at the right time. And it sounds small, but it actually has really big ramifications in your mindset and in your ability to trust in your skills, your preparedness, all of it when you walk into the ring. So it's really kind of a big deal, okay? So if we don't trust ourselves, which includes, like I said, training decisions or our preparation or even just our ability to handle ourselves under pressure, then it's nearly impossible to show up confidently when we compete, right? Because if we don't trust ourselves to handle pressure, then whenever we feel a little pressure, we might start to panic, okay? Because we don't trust how we're going to perform in that situation. Make sense? So here are some ways to build trust in ourselves, okay? The first thing is like preparation. When we know that we've put in the work, we know that we've been practicing regularly, or, we've been breaking down new skills and working on new skills, or, maybe we made ourselves go to the grocery store and did a little meal prep or a little snack prep for the weekend so that we're eating a little healthier and we're not just grabbing the French fries at the venue or what have you. All of those little things help with our preparation. And when we are prepared, which, by the way, is one of those things that we are fully in control of, right? So in terms of like things we control versus things we don't control, we fully control our preparation. I know for me that when I am nervous these days, right, at this point in my career, for the most part, if I walk into the ring nervous, it is because I know on some level that I did not prepare enough. there was something else I could have done. It's usually not that like, oh, this is going to be hard or, this is a little over my head. It's usually that, if I'm being honest with myself, there was more I could have done to prepare. That's me. That's my version of when I get nervous, is when there's like a little bit, maybe it's a little bit of guilt even, that I could have prepared more. Okay. So ask yourself, when you get nervous, what is it? Is it the external things of like the course, the ring, the setup, or is it the internal things about like trusting your preparation or your own skills or what have you? Okay. The second thing to help you build some self-trust goes back to what we were talking, the example I gave earlier about promising yourself that you'll unpack your runs at the end of the day. And that goes with like keeping a journal or using your planner and just making some little notes in the boxes or what have you of both your successes, your progress, the things you want to work on, maybe the mistake that you made and what you would have done differently so that you are already learning and already applying for next time. So when we keep that journal of successes and progress, it reminds us of our growth. It reminds us how far we've come. It reminds us of our capabilities. It has all of these really great ramifications. And remember, it fulfills the promise that we made to ourselves that we would in fact unpack the day. Okay. The third way to work on your trust is to avoid perfectionism. And I'm already laughing because this is a hard one for me. Setting realistic expectations of how the day is going to go or how a specific run is going to go really helps us avoid that perfection trap. And I think perfection is a trap because I don't think that it's particularly attainable, and certainly not attainable on a regular basis. Like perfection is, there's a lot of cues that happen in the world that aren't perfect runs, right? Not everything is a 200, or a 100 or whatever it is your high score is, and even if it is, maybe it wasn't perfect. Maybe you were able to save a part of it, right? With good handling. So setting realistic expectations and then allowing yourself to attain those. So it's not lowering the bar, it's being realistic so that you can perform with excellence, or you can perform better than you did yesterday. Or by focusing on your process goals, you're able to make progress and celebrate success. And yeah, maybe you cue, maybe you don't. But regardless, it didn't have to be perfect, and you were still able to work on your process goals and make progress toward the direction of what your bigger goals are. Okay. So those are all like some small ways. And I'd be curious to know how you have come to trust yourself, and where you erode your own trust. Like I've come to trust myself in my logistical preparation and making being organized. There's great comfort in it for me in being organized. And when I am organized and I feel organized, then I just feel more relaxed. So that's a place of trust. A place of mistrust for me is around my eating habits, because this girl loves sugar. If sugar is the first ingredient in something, I'm here, I'm there, wherever it is, I'm there. I'm the person at the mock cake party who looks for the frosting, right? Instead of scrapes it off. I'm that person. And so I have a lot of trust issues around my eating because I'm not very good about it. And I will self-sabotage on a moment's notice. If 1 grain of sugar blows across the counter, I notice it. So that's an area of mistrust for me. And like I said before, when I get nervous, I know that it's because I'm not trusting my preparation. Either I didn't do enough, or I just don't feel like I'm prepared for whatever reason. So that's sort of my synopsis. Okay, we are going to shift to trusting in the partnership with our dogs when I come back. Quick question. Do you ever wish you had more mindset help? Well, the Q membership was created just for that reason. Every month we pick a topic, and then we have 4 lessons, which are kind of like these podcasts, that we dive deeper into. And so if you are ready for more, you're ready for more mindset work, think about joining the Q membership. Annual members get a free coaching session, but you can also choose the monthly option as well. Go to thecuecoach.com to learn more. Let's get back to the episode. Okay, so trusting in our partnership with our dogs. This one you probably were expecting when I brought up the conversation of trust. And because we want to be able to trust in our dogs, not only in their skills, but in our connection, in our partnership, being able to do this dance, right? Again, regardless of your sport, whether you're doing a beautiful healing pattern or an elegant, sequence of jumps or anything in between, beautiful water rescue, whatever it is that you're working on, there's a symbiotic relationship. There's it is like a dance. And I think when you watch people like really beautifully dance, they're trusting in each other, right? They're trusting in their partner to be there at the right moment, to catch them, to read their actions, to read their, facial expressions, whatever it is, and being able to do that. So our dogs need to be able to trust us. We need to be able to trust our dogs. We both need to trust that we're going to rise to the occasion, whatever that will be. I know I've definitely asked my dogs to step up, if I was feeling sort of angsty or nervous or something. So we've really got to, continue to build our relationship through the lens of trust. And I say through the lens of trust because there's a lot of ways to build our relationship. But I could have a great relationship with my dog and never trust them off leash. Okay. Which is, a common example and not uncommon that you would have a dog that you wouldn't trust on off leash, right? No problem. But I want to be able to trust in my dog's skills and believe in my dog's abilities when I walk into the ring, and trust that they are prepared, trust that they're not confused, right? That they know what their job is. And if I need to set more realistic expectations, then I set them at their ability, right? And I trust, a novice dog's a great example. I'm not going to walk into even the novice ring thinking that they've got this, because they're probably a young dog and I probably haven't built that trust up yet. So I'm going to be a little more cautious with my handling, or a little more, kind of on point and paying attention, because I can't just trust that something my 6-year-old dog would have done easily that my 2-year-old dog is going to figure out. Okay. So trust is kind of almost like appropriate. You got to pick your appropriate trust, but regardless, you always want to be building it. Okay. So some common roadblocks to trusting in our dogs include, if we're always overcorrecting or micromanaging, or we feel like we have to help all the time. That's something I feel like I do in obedience. I feel like I'm always helping too much. And then we go in the ring to a trial and suddenly I'm not helping them at all. And they're like, well, this is a dramatic change of pace, right? You go from helping me way too much to helping me not at all. So I feel like that's kind of in this category of overcorrecting or micromanaging or helping, or whatever your word is for that. I'm in those moments when I'm helping my dog, I'm not trusting that they can figure it out. Now, maybe that's appropriate because they're a baby dog, or maybe they're just learning. So I have an appropriate expectation and I need to help accordingly. But it also could be I'm helping beyond the point of them needing help, right? I'm just over in there, helicopter mom micromanaging when I don't need to. Okay. Another common roadblock is to be really frustrated or really impatient when we're training. I definitely can be that. If you've ever said the words to your dogs, you should know this by now. We've done this 100 times. I feel like that's kind of in this category. And the dog is obviously telling you through their actions that they don't know it, don't get it, are confused, or maybe just confused in the moment. But our reaction to their making a mistake can either build trust or erode trust. And I really want you to think about how your actions impact that trust in your relationship, okay? Whether you're in training or whether you're in the ring. Another common roadblock is, unclear or inconsistent communication. When we change our mind, or when we just aren't truly consistent with what we're giving the information we're giving our dogs. Again, could be while we're training. It also could be while they're lounging about in the living room. Are we being consistent? Is there a way that we could communicate with them more effectively? And again, when you look at these things through the lens of trust and curiosity, then you are less judgy and more listening, right? Like the very popular meme sort of thing that's going around is like, we listen, we don't judge. Okay. So that really needs to apply to our training and, working with our dogs in our relationship buildings. Listen more, judging less. Okay. Finally, a common roadblock, I think, for a lot of people is inability to let go of grudges, or holding grudges, I should say. And first, when I say like, oh, you're holding a grudge against your dog, people are like, I would never do that. I love my dog. My dog is perfect. I have the best dog in the world. Yeah, true. But if you are holding against your dog the thing they did 2 years ago at that venue, and so now you don't trust that they're not going to do that, which is really coming from a place of fear because you're worried or scared that they're going to do the thing again, right? So many of our fears, so many of our ring nerves come from us being afraid that something in the past is going to repeat itself, right? We're afraid that our dog is going to run out of the ring, right? My Novice A dog ran out of several rings. Like, I'm sure it was even more than one hand's worth of counting. There was the time he did it in the out of sight stays. Back in the day, we had to do that. There was the time he did it in agility. I could go on. So a grudge I always held against that dog was like, oh, he might run out of the ring. And I never really forgave him for that. And I never really allowed him to grow out of it. You know what I'm saying? Like I always kind of like, oh, that he ran out of the ring once. He might run out of the ring again. So one, I was always fearful of it. It would make me nervous. And two, I always kind of like looked at him like, you're that dog who ran out of the ring. Okay. Now, he lived to be, a wise old dog. I didn't worry about that on a regular basis. I didn't walk into rings thinking he was going to leave. But when he was younger, I kind of did. Okay. And so I share that because I think there's probably a grudge that you're holding against your dogs, right? You think Moxie and my weave poles, you think there's not a grudge buried in that, therapist couch? Of course there is, right? So there are little things that we are holding against our dogs. And when we don't dissolve it or we don't allow for it to fade away, it's getting in the way of us building trust because we look at him, we're like, you're the dog that left the ring that time. Or you, when you were younger, you visited the ring crew all the time or what have you. And sometimes I've even seen with handlers that the grudge that they're holding is from like 3 dogs ago. Right? So think about that. Think about how your fears, the things you are afraid of, end up really getting in the way of building trust with the dog that is in front of you today. Right? That, for me, that running out of the ring thing might have been really fair when that dog was 3 or even 4, but it was unfair to him when he was 8 or 9. Right? Because he wasn't going to do that anymore. Probably. Okay. So when we want to strengthen trust then with our dogs, we want to be consistent, right? We want to stick to the clear cues, clear communication, predictable routines, predictable training, so that they know what to expect. We know what to expect, and we can sort of build that consistency. Of course, celebrate the wins, big, small, medium, whatever, but even minor successes build confidence in our dogs. When we can be genuinely happy that they did something that we know that is difficult for them, whether or not it's easy for every other dog is not the point, but whether they can do it for the first time or something and really celebrating that win is being true to our own journey. And that really builds a bond then between us and our dogs. And then of course, when we try to mimic pressure situations so that we can practice in those pressure situations, like mimicking competition or just setting up scenarios in which you can mimic pressure and then be successful. That's really going to build your confidence, your trust in each other, the fact that you're going to always be there for your dog's always going to be there for you. It just builds it up. Okay. And I'm sure that you can add to this list. I'm sure you all have more ideas of how you can build trust with your dogs. Okay. So a couple notes before we conclude about what happens when we have to repair trust or repair the bond, or when trust is sort of, it's kind of wavering. It's not really that strong. Okay. It could be because you had a trial or a day, where things fell apart, or a training session that felt like all the wheels not only fell off, there just were no wheels to be found, right? And again, like we always say, it's what matters is how you respond to that, because we're all going to have off days. You're going to have off days. Your dog's going to have off days. Hopefully you have them on different days, but you might both have an off day together, okay? My favorite thing is to lean in with curiosity, which kind of goes back to the we listen, we don't judge thing, right? Think about what happened. Think about why. So instead of immediately going to judgment of I can't believe my dog did that, or even I was so stupid to make that mistake, I know better. That's judgy, very judgy thoughts, very much inner critic, if for last week's episode, very inner criticky, very, self-talk mean girl, right? Instead, what if you were just ask yourself, I wonder why that happened. Or I wonder why I'm struggling to get this skill. I wonder what I told my dog that they misunderstood, because my dog is just reading me, right? So if we can replace the judgment with curiosity, we're going to get a lot farther in our training and get much, much better, much more actionable feedback. The other thing to do is when you're repairing trust is go back. We talk about training as a ladder, right? You go up the ladder, down the ladder, And I would say you go back down the ladder. You do something basic. You do something you can be successful at. You go have a training session where maybe it's quote easy, or you're just working on basics or foundations or stuff you both really enjoy doing. And you just have a fun confidence building session. And it's a confidence builder. It's a trust builder. It's going back to those basics where you can be successful as a team. You can get your groove back a little bit and just have a day or a week or a month, depending on where you are, where you're just leaning in with curiosity, but you're really just, building bridges. Okay. Of course, be patient, because what's interesting about how dogs learn is, they're latent learning, so it may take a little minute, but then all of a sudden they may come back out and they're maybe like, oh, I get it now, right? So trust isn't instant. If you think about trust with another person, it takes time. And so give yourself and your dogs time to either initially build trust or to rebuild trust, or to build that bond, whatever that looks like. Okay. It's not going to be overnight. And then from there, when you really have trust and you really have that bond, think about any dog you've had that's been running that, the comfortable slipper analogy, right? Or running that old shoe, or, or whatever, where you just feel so comfortable. Part of where that's coming from is your bond, is your relationship, is the trust that you have in each other that has taken years to develop, usually at least 6 years to develop. And you just it feels so effortless to be with them in the ring, right? And that came with time. That came with practice and clarity and building confidence and consistency and just that unstoppable energy sort of coming together. So that it didn't just happen overnight. It needs to be cultivated. So visualize it. Visualize how you want that relationship to be. Visualize how you want to interact with your dog. We're so busy visualizing our performances, but you can also visualize your relationship and visualize your connection and visualize the trust and the back and forth between you two. Okay. So make sure that you're doing that as well. So stay present, celebrate the progress, leave perfection at the door, and just really work to believe to your core that the most important thing we can do is to pick up the leash, to start with a solid foundation in our relationship. And trust is a major component of that. Okay. So think about that. I would love to know, I'd love to think about, but also tell me, because I love the feedback. Tell me what erodes your trust. How do you feel about the trust between you and your dog right now? Where do you think that sits? Is it conditional? Like in some rings, it's great, but in some venues, it's not as good, right? Like I would say, I'm really working on my obedience this year. Like that's a really personal goal for me. So I feel like I don't have that as much in the obedience ring as I might in other rings, right? And where's that coming from? Is it coming from confidence, experience? Is it, coming from, because I'm still confusing my dog when I ask for things, like where is that coming from? So just kind of use this conversation as, fodder for self-reflection as you're driving around this weekend or wherever you're off to, and think about how trust plays a part, how curiosity can play a part, where confidence comes from for you. And just, I think you can probably define like what trust feels like, especially if you've had an older, more successful dog. You can be like, that's the relationship I want with these young dogs or whatever. Okay. So that's your homework. Think about how trust plays into your world, kind of analyze where you think you are with your dogs, and really just take a look at that and how you can work on your relationship specifically from a trust standpoint and what kind of amazing impact that might have. Okay? And no matter what you're up to this week, I hope you have a fantastic week with your dogs. Thanks so much for listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast with me, Julie Bacon. I am so grateful for your precious time. Check out my Dogged Planner workbook and journal available on Amazon. Just search for Dogged Planner. I also offer monthly membership that's perfect for ongoing support of your awesome goals. Check out theqcoach.com for details, or just stop by and check out all the ways you can work on your mindset. And be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at theqcoach and let me know how it's going. Finally, please share, subscribe, and leave a review. This helps us podcasters tremendously. Plus, I know I get my best podcast recommendations from friends. Thanks, and have a great week with your dogs.